Captain Ryan Blake was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming across the bridge of the UES Horizon. The Deep Space Patrol vessel had been cruising the outer edges of the solar system for 3 weeks without seeing anything more exciting than a few asteroids and cosmic dust. Blake set down his cup and walked quickly to the sensor station, where Lieutenant Emma Price was staring at her screens with wide eyes. "What do we have, Price?" Blake asked, leaning over her shoulder to look at the readings. "Sir, I'm picking up 3 massive energy signatures near Pluto's orbit," Price said, her voice shaking slightly. "They just appeared out of nowhere about 2 minutes ago." Blake frowned and studied the data. The signatures were huge, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Each one was easily the size of a small moon, and they were giving off energy. Readings that made no sense according to human science. "Are you sure these readings are correct?" Blake asked. "I've run the scans 5 times, sir," Price replied. "Whatever those things are, they're real, and they're not natural." Blake felt his stomach drop. For decades, humanity had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed they had their answer, and it had come looking for them. Send. "An immediate priority message to Luna Station Prime," Blake ordered. "Tell Admiral Morrison we have possible first contact. Include all sensor data." Back at Luna Station Prime, Admiral Jake Morrison was reviewing weekly supply reports when the message from the Horizon arrived. He read it twice, then called for an emergency meeting of his senior staff. Within an hour, the conference room was filled with the station's top officers and scientists. Dr. Lisa Hamilton arrived last, still wearing her lab coat and looking confused about why she had been called away from her research. As the station's chief xenobiologist, she had spent years studying the possibility of alien life, but she never expected to be dealing with the real thing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morrison began, "we have a situation. 3 alien vessels have appeared in our solar system." The room erupted in surprised voices, but Morrison raised his hand for silence. "Dr. Hamilton, I need you to head up our scientific analysis team. Commander Davis, coordinate with Earth Defense Command. This information needs to reach Director Cross immediately." On Earth, Director Helen Cross was in a budget meeting when her secure phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and saw it was Admiral Morrison's direct line. She excused herself from the meeting and stepped into her private office. "Director Cross?" "We have first contact," Morrison said without any greeting. Cross felt the world tilt around her. She had been preparing for this possibility her entire career, but hearing the words still hit her like a physical blow. "How many ships?" she asked. 3. Each one is the size of a small moon. They appeared near Pluto about an hour ago." Cross closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "I'll call an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Keep monitoring the situation and report any changes immediately." For the next 6 hours, humanity's leadership worked frantically to understand what they were dealing with. Dr. Hamilton and her team analyzed every piece of sensor data they could get from the Horizon and other ships that had been diverted to observe the alien vessels. "The technology is completely beyond anything we understand," Hamilton reported during a video conference with Earth's leadership. "The energy signatures suggest they're using some kind of space-time manipulation for propulsion. Their hull materials don't match anything in our database." Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the alien ships began transmitting. The message came through on standard radio frequencies, in perfect English, with a voice that sounded almost human, but with strange undertones that made everyone who heard it feel uncomfortable. "Greetings, inhabitants of the 3rd planet of this star system. We are representatives of the Dominion Collective, a coalition of civilized worlds that has observed your species' rapid technological development with great interest. Admiral Morrison, Director Cross, and dozens of other leaders around the world listened to the message in stunned silence. We come in peace, seeking diplomatic contact with your governing authorities. We represent over 1,000 worlds and have helped guide many younger civilizations toward prosperity and advancement. We request a formal meeting to discuss your planet's future and the opportunities that await you among the stars. The message continued with coordinates for a meeting point between Mars and Jupiter, along with assurances that the aliens came with peaceful intentions. We understand that first contact can be overwhelming for developing civilizations. We are prepared to be patient while you organize your response. However, we hope you understand that our time is valuable, and we cannot wait indefinitely for your decision. When the transmission ended, the silence in the various command centers around Earth stretched for long minutes. Finally, Admiral Morrison spoke. Director Cross, I recommend we activate Protocol Omega immediately. Cross nodded grimly. Protocol. Omega was humanity's most classified contingency plan, developed 50 years ago when scientists first detected unusual signals from deep space that suggested the possibility of alien intelligence. Agreed, Cross said. How long do we need? Give me 72 hours, Morrison replied. While the world's leaders debated how to respond to the aliens, Morrison was already sending coded messages to hidden facilities throughout the solar system. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in hollowed-out asteroids, and in secret bases on the dark side of the moon, long-dormant systems began coming online. Dr. Steve Parker received his activation order while he was eating dinner with his family. The message was simple and coded, but he understood immediately. He kissed his wife goodbye and told her he had to go to work for a few days. Parker drove to what appeared to be a normal office building in downtown Denver, but took an elevator that descended much deeper than the building's basement. When the doors opened, he stepped into a massive underground facility that had been carved out of solid rock over the course of decades. General Paul Harris was already there, along with hundreds of other engineers and technicians who had been called in from around the world. Harris had been waiting for this day his entire career. People, Harris announced to the assembled crowd, today is the day we've been preparing for. Project Goliath is now active. You all know what that means. Parker nodded along with the others. They had all been briefed on Project Goliath years ago, but most of them never expected it would actually be implemented. The project was humanity's ultimate insurance policy against exactly the kind of situation they now faced. As the teams dispersed to their various workstations, Parker looked around at the massive facility with new eyes. For 50 years, humanity had been building in secret, using technology and resources that most people never knew existed. They had prepared for this day with a level of planning and dedication that few civilizations in the galaxy had ever achieved. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species that had barely left their home planet. They had no idea that humanity had been watching the stars and preparing for visitors for longer than most alien civilizations had existed. Back in space, Captain Blake continued monitoring the 3 alien vessels, which had remained motionless since transmitting their message. They seemed to be waiting patiently for humanity's response, confident that their overwhelming size and advanced technology would intimidate the humans into compliance. Blake smiled grimly as he watched the sensor readings. If the aliens only knew what was about to happen, they might not be quite so confident. But that was the point of the deception. Humanity had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to win a fight was to make sure your opponent never saw it coming. Ambassador Kate Rodriguez had been Earth's top diplomat for 15 years, but nothing in her career had prepared her for this moment. She stood on the bridge of the UES Covenant, watching through the main viewport as they approached the coordinates the aliens had specified for their meeting. The diplomatic vessel was humanity's finest ship, or at least that was what they wanted the aliens to think. "Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the alien vessel," reported communications. Officer Lance Sam Wells. "Put it on screen," Rodriguez said, straightening her formal diplomatic uniform. The view screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what appeared to be an alien bridge. The being that appeared was tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to look right through her. Its movements were graceful and precise, and there was something about its presence that made Rodriguez feel like she was looking at a teacher waiting patiently for a slow student to understand a simple lesson. "I am Envoy Prime Silthak of the Dominion Collective," the alien said in that unsettling, almost human voice. "You may address me as Envoy Prime. I assume you are the representative of your planetary government." "I am Ambassador Kate Rodriguez, representing the United Earth government," she replied, keeping her voice steady and professional. "Excellent. Please bring your vessel alongside our diplomatic craft. We have prepared suitable accommodations for your primitive life support requirements." Rodriguez felt a flash of irritation at the word primitive, but she kept her expression neutral. "That's very considerate of you, Envoy Prime. However, our protocols require that initial meetings take place in neutral space. Perhaps we could arrange for representatives from both sides to meet aboard temporary facilities." The alien's expression didn't change, but Rodriguez thought she detected a hint of annoyance in its large, dark eyes. "Very well. We shall accommodate your inexperience with proper diplomatic procedures." Within hours, both sides had deployed temporary meeting stations in the empty space between their vessels. Rodriguez arrived with a small team including Commander Alex Turner, her military attaché, and Dr. Hamilton, who had been brought along as a scientific advisor. The meeting took place in a simple chamber with basic life support and minimal furnishings. The aliens arrived with 3 representatives, all tall and pale like Envoy Prime, wearing what appeared to be living suits that shifted and changed color subtly as they moved. "Before we begin formal negotiations," Envoy Prime said, settling into a chair that seemed to mold itself to his body, "allow me to explain the generous opportunity that the Dominion Collective is offering to your species." Rodriguez listened carefully as the alien described their vast empire spanning thousands of star systems. According to Envoy Prime, the Dominion was a peaceful coalition that helped younger civilizations advance rapidly by sharing technology and knowledge in exchange for membership in their collective. "Your species shows remarkable potential," Envoy Prime continued. "Your aggressive nature and rapid technological development make you ideal candidates for integration into our collective. You would serve as our enforcement arm, helping to bring order to less cooperative worlds." Commander Turner shifted slightly in his seat, and Rodriguez knew he had caught the same disturbing implications she had. The aliens weren't offering partnership. They were offering employment as galactic thugs. "That's a fascinating proposal," Rodriguez said carefully. "Could you tell us more about what this membership would entail for Earth's population?" "Naturally, your current primitive governmental systems would be dissolved and replaced with more efficient collective management. Your population would be relocated to designated areas where they can be properly educated and trained for their new roles. Individual ownership of property and resources would be transferred to collective management for optimal efficiency. Dr. Hamilton leaned forward slightly. And what about our scientific research and cultural practices? Irrelevant pursuits will be discontinued so your species can focus on more useful activities, another alien representative replied. Your current chaotic approach to knowledge gathering is wasteful and inefficient. The collective will provide all necessary information as it becomes relevant to your assigned functions. Rodriguez felt her blood run cold, but she maintained her diplomatic smile. This is certainly a comprehensive proposal. I'm sure you understand that a decision of this magnitude requires careful consideration by our leadership. Of course, Envoy Prime said, with what might have been a condescending smile. We are prepared to be patient with your primitive decision-making processes. However, you should understand that our offer comes with a limited time frame. The collective has other priorities, and we cannot wait indefinitely for your acceptance. What happens if we need more time to consider? Commander Turner asked. Aliens exchanged glances before Envoy Prime answered. The collective has had experiences with stubborn civilizations before. Sometimes forced integration becomes necessary for the greater good. It is always more pleasant when cooperation is voluntary. The threat was delivered so politely that it took a moment for the full implications to sink in. Rodriguez realized that this wasn't really a negotiation at all. The aliens had already decided Earth's fate. They were simply going through the motions of offering a choice. I see, Rodriguez said. Well, I believe we need to report back to our leadership and discuss your generous offer. Perhaps we could reconvene in 72 hours? Acceptable, Envoy Prime agreed. We shall await your response. As soon as they were back aboard the Covenant, Rodriguez called an emergency conference with Admiral Morrison and the other Earth leaders. They're not here to negotiate, she reported bluntly. They're here to inform us that we're being absorbed into their empire, whether we like it or not. The only choice they're giving us is whether it happens peacefully or violently. Admiral Morrison nodded grimly. We suspected as much. How did they respond to your questions about their capabilities? Commander Turner spoke up. They were very confident, almost arrogant. They clearly see us as primitives who should be grateful for their attention. When I asked about their fleet size, one of them mentioned that what we're seeing is just a small diplomatic escort. Apparently, they have much larger forces available if needed. Did you get any sense of their technology levels? Dr. Hamilton asked. Advanced, but not impossibly so, Turner replied. Their equipment is clearly superior to what we've shown them, but they didn't seem to think we could possibly understand their capabilities. They were actually quite dismissive of our questions about their tech. Meanwhile, deep beneath Earth's surface and in hidden facilities throughout the solar system, General Harris was coordinating the activation of systems that had been built, in absolute secrecy over the course of 5 decades. Dr. Parker stood in front of a massive control panel in the underground Denver facility, watching as indicators showed systems coming online across the solar system. The asteroid mining operations that the public thought were for resource gathering had actually been building something much more significant. Status report, General Harris said, walking up behind Parker. All primary construction sites are active, Parker replied, checking his displays. The lunar facilities are at 90% readiness. The asteroid installations are fully operational. The deep space platforms are moving into position. How long until we can begin final assembly? Another 48 hours, sir. The last components are being moved into position now. Harris nodded. Good. The aliens think they're dealing with a species that just barely managed to build a few space stations and some primitive interplanetary ships. They have no idea what we've really been doing out here. Chief Engineer Maria Santos was overseeing operations from a facility hidden inside what appeared to be a normal asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. Her teams had been working around the clock to prepare the final stages of humanity's most ambitious project. "How are the quantum drive tests going?" she asked her lead physicist, Dr. Amy Foster. "Better than expected," Foster replied, studying a complex display of quantum equations. "The entanglement matrices are holding stable even at full power. The big aliens' own energy signatures are actually helping us calibrate the systems," Santos smiled. "They're giving us targeting data without even knowing it." Colonel Nick Johnson was coordinating from a facility on the far side of the moon where massive construction bays had been carved out of the lunar rock. Captain Ben Wright was running final tests on prototype systems that would have seemed like magic to most humans, let alone aliens who thought Earth was a primitive backwater. "The phase shift generators are working perfectly," Wright reported over the comm. "I can transition the test vessel between normal space and quantum fold in under 3 seconds. "Excellent," Johnson replied. "How are the adaptive armor systems?" "Beyond our wildest expectations. The nanotechnology is integrating perfectly with the quantum matrices. These ships won't just be tough, they'll be able to regenerate damage faster than most weapons can cause it." As the 72-hour deadline approached, Ambassador Rodriguez prepared for her return to the alien diplomatic station. She had received her instructions from Earth's leadership, and she knew exactly what she needed to say. While Ambassador Rodriguez was buying time with diplomatic negotiations, the real work was happening in places the aliens could never imagine. Chief Engineer Maria Santos stood in the primary assembly bay of Construction Platform 7, watching, as the final components of humanity's greatest achievement were moved into place. The platform itself was hidden inside what appeared to be a normal asteroid, but the interior had been hollowed out and converted into a shipyard larger than any facility on Earth. Automated systems that had been building in secret for decades were now working at maximum capacity, assembling vessels that represented the pinnacle of human engineering. "Status report on the Titan," Santos called out to her team. "Hull integrity at 100%. Reported engineer Kate Lewis from her control station. "Quantum drive systems are fully integrated and testing within normal parameters. Adaptive armor plating is responding correctly to all stimuli." Santos nodded with satisfaction. The UES Titan was the first of the Colossus-Class vessels, ships, so advanced that they made humanity's public fleet look like primitive toys. Every system aboard the ship incorporated technology that the aliens thought was impossible for a species like humanity to develop. Dr. Amy Foster was running final checks on the quantum entanglement weapons systems. The science behind them had taken human physicists 50 years to perfect, building on theories that most alien civilizations had never even considered. "The entanglement matrices are stable across all weapon arrays," Foster reported. "We can now target and strike objects at any distance instantaneously, regardless of conventional physics limitations." "What about the dimensional phase capabilities?" Santos asked. "Working perfectly," replied Captain Ben Wright, who had just completed another test flight in one of the smaller prototype vessels. "I can shift the ship out of normal space-time completely. Enemy weapons pass right through us while we remain fully functional and able to return fire." The technology seemed impossible even to the humans who had built it, but it was the result of decades of focused research and development. While the rest of humanity went about their daily lives, the brightest minds on Earth had been working in secret to prepare for this exact scenario. Colonel Nick Johnson was coordinating operations. From the lunar facility, where 12 more Colossus-Class vessels were in various stages of completion, the moon's far side had been transformed into a massive industrial complex, hidden from Earth's view and completely invisible to alien sensors. Construction Bay 4 reports that the Leviathan is ready for final systems integration, Johnson announced over the communications network that connected all of humanity's hidden facilities. "Excellent," came the reply from General Harris, who was overseeing the entire operation from his command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains. "How are our defensive platforms?" "All asteroid installations are fully operational," reported Commander Lisa Stone from her position aboard Hidden Platform 12. "We have weapons and sensor arrays positioned throughout the solar system. The aliens have no idea they're being watched by over 200 concealed installations." The scale of humanity's deception was staggering. For 50 years, every major government on Earth had contributed resources and personnel to Project Goliath. Asteroid mining operations had been cover stories for building hidden military installations. Scientific research stations had been fronts for weapons development facilities. Even civilian space programs had been secretly testing components for the Colossus-Class vessels. Dr. Steve Parker was working in the Denver facility, monitoring the quantum communication networks that connected all of humanity's secret operations. The networks used technology so advanced that signals could be transmitted instantaneously across vast distances without any possibility of interception. "All facilities report ready status," Parker announced to General Harris. "We can coordinate a system-wide response at a moment's notice." "Good," Harris replied. "The aliens think they're dealing with a species that just recently developed spaceflight. They have no idea that we've been preparing for their arrival since before their grandparents were born." The deception had required incredible discipline and coordination. Thousands of people had worked on Project Goliath over the decades, and not one of them had ever revealed the secret. They understood that humanity's survival might depend on maintaining the illusion of primitive capability until the moment came to reveal the truth. Captain Lisa Stone was aboard the UES Titan, running final checks on the ship's systems. As the vessel's commanding officer, she had trained for this moment her entire career, but even she was amazed by the capabilities at her disposal. "Navigation, report on dimensional fold drives," she ordered. "All fold generators are operating within optimal parameters," replied Lieutenant Dan Brooks from the navigation station. "We can transition to folded space and emerge anywhere in the solar system within 30 seconds. Weapons status? All quantum arrays are charged and ready," reported Weapons Officer Commander Janet Mills. "Adaptive targeting systems are locked onto all alien vessels. We can strike them before they even know we're here." The Titan alone was more powerful than the entire alien fleet that had arrived at Earth. Its quantum drives allowed it to move faster than light without using the conventional physics that other species relied on. Its weapons could strike targets across impossible distances, and its adaptive armor could regenerate damage almost instantly. But the Titan was just one ship in humanity's secret fleet. Dozens of other vessels were positioned throughout the solar system, each one incorporating technology that would revolutionize galactic civilization if the aliens were intelligent enough to recognize what they were seeing. Fleet Admiral Robert King was overseeing the final preparations from his command ship, the UES Sovereign, which was positioned in folded space near Earth. His fleet represented the culmination of human ambition and engineering excellence. "All ships report ready for revelation," King announced over the fleet communications network. Remember, we want to make an impression that the aliens will never forget. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The aliens expected a demonstration of primitive human weapons, probably chemical rockets or basic energy beams. Instead, they were about to witness technology that would force them to completely reevaluate their understanding of human civilization. Meanwhile, the alien fleet remained in position near their diplomatic meeting point, completely unaware that they were surrounded by forces they couldn't detect. The Dominion Collective had encountered hundreds of primitive species over the millennia, and they all followed the same predictable pattern of development. None of them had ever achieved the kind of technological breakthrough that humanity had accomplished. Envoy Prime was confident that the human demonstration would be amusing, but ultimately irrelevant. He had seen primitive species try to impress their betters before, and it never amounted to anything significant. A few crude weapons, perhaps some basic energy manipulation, nothing that would change the fundamental balance of power. Prepare to observe the human demonstration, he instructed his subordinates. This should provide some entertainment before we proceed with the integration process. The aliens had no idea that human scientists had discovered principles of physics that most galactic civilizations thought were purely theoretical. Quantum entanglement on a massive scale, dimensional folding technology, and adaptive nanotechnology were all concepts that the Dominion Collective considered impossible for practical application. Dr. Foster was making final adjustments to the Titan's quantum arrays when she received the signal from Admiral Morrison. The moment had arrived to show the aliens exactly what humanity was capable of achieving. All quantum matrices are synchronized, she reported to Captain Stone. We're ready to begin the demonstration. Stone nodded and opened a channel to Fleet. Admiral King. Titan standing by for Revelation Protocol. Acknowledged, Titan, King replied. All ships, prepare for dimensional emergence. Let's show our guests what real technology looks like. Throughout the solar system, hidden installations began powering up weapons and sensors that the aliens had never detected. Construction platforms prepared to reveal their true nature. And in folded space around the diplomatic meeting point, the most advanced fleet ever built by any species began preparing to emerge into normal space-time. The aliens were about to learn that their assumption about human primitive capability was not just wrong, but spectacularly, dangerously wrong. They had come expecting to find subjects for their empire, but instead they were about to encounter a civilization that could reshape their understanding of what was possible in the universe. Captain Wright completed his final systems check and smiled grimly. After 50 years of preparation, humanity was finally ready to reveal their hand. The aliens wanted a demonstration of human capability, and they were about to get one that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The aliens chose a small asteroid about 2 kilometers across for their demonstration. Envoy Prime wanted to show the humans exactly what kind of power they would be joining and what would happen if they chose to resist the generous offer of integration into the Dominion Collective. Observe carefully, Envoy Prime said to Ambassador Rodriguez as they watched from the diplomatic station. This will help your primitive leadership understand the magnitude of our technological superiority. The alien flagship began to glow with a pale blue energy that made the space around it shimmer like heat waves. A beam of concentrated force lanced out from the ship and struck the asteroid dead center. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the entire 2-kilometer rock simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even dust remained. Impressive, Rodriguez said, managing to keep her voice steady despite the frightening display of power. Your technology is clearly very advanced. "This is merely a fraction of our capabilities," Envoy Prime replied with what might have been smugness. "Our warships can destroy entire planets if necessary. Your species would be wise to remember this when making their decision." Commander Turner nodded thoughtfully. "That's certainly something our leaders will want to consider. Now, if you don't mind, we'd like to reciprocate with a small demonstration of our own capabilities." The aliens looked amused by this suggestion. "By all means," said Envoy Prime. "We are curious to see what your primitive weapons can accomplish." Rodriguez smiled and activated her communication device. "Admiral Morrison, we're ready to begin our demonstration." "Acknowledged, Ambassador," came Morrison's voice over the channel. "Initiating demonstration protocol now." At first, nothing seemed to happen. The empty space around the diplomatic meeting point looked exactly the same as it had moments before. The aliens waited patiently, expecting to see some crude chemical rockets or basic energy weapons that would provide mild entertainment. Then space itself began to ripple. The effect started as barely visible distortions in the starlight, like looking through water. But the ripples grew stronger and more pronounced, until it seemed as if reality itself was bending and folding around them. "What is this?" Envoy Prime demanded, his confident demeanor faltering for the first time. "Just a small demonstration of human engineering," Rodriguez replied calmly. The ripples intensified, and then something impossible happened. A massive ship simply materialized out of nothing, not emerging from behind a planet or uncloaking from stealth technology, but literally coming into existence from folded space-time. The UES Titan was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Its hull was a deep black that seemed to absorb light, but lines of blue energy pulsed along its surface in patterns that suggested both organic growth and precise mathematical design. The ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest alien vessel, but it moved with a grace that made it seem almost alive. "Impossible," whispered one of the alien representatives. "No species at your development level should possess dimensional folding technology." "Oh, but we're just getting started," Rodriguez said with a broader smile. More ripples appeared throughout the space around them. Dozens of ships began emerging from folded dimensions, each one unique in design, but clearly part of a unified technological paradigm. The vessels ranged from sleek destroyers to massive dreadnoughts, all incorporating the same impossible technology that the aliens had just witnessed. Captain Lisa Stone's voice broadcast across all frequencies, reaching not just the diplomatic station, but every sensor array in the alien fleet. "This is Captain Stone of the UES Titan, flagship of Earth's Colossus fleet. We welcome our visitors to Sol System and hope they're enjoying our little demonstration." The alien fleet, which had seemed so imposing just moments before, now looked primitive and outdated compared to the human vessels surrounding them. The Dominion ships were large and powerful, but they followed conventional design principles. The human ships seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, flickering in and out of visibility as their dimensional systems cycled. Fleet Admiral King's voice joined the broadcast, speaking with calm authority that carried across the void. "I am Fleet Admiral King, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. We appreciate the Dominion Collective's interest in our little planet, but I'm afraid we must decline your generous offer of integration." Envoy Prime was staring at the displays showing his fleet's sensor readings. The numbers made no sense according to everything the Dominion Collective knew about technological development. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Your species only achieved spaceflight decades ago. These vessels incorporate technology that should take millennia to develop. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the communication channel with obvious satisfaction. You assumed we were primitive because we chose to appear primitive. We've been watching you watch us for much longer than you realize. The demonstration continued as human weapons systems began showcasing capabilities that violated the aliens' understanding of physics. Quantum entanglement arrays fired projectiles that struck targets before the weapons themselves had finished. Charging. Adaptive armor systems converted incoming sensor scans into additional power for the ship's systems. Dr. Foster was monitoring the quantum arrays from her position aboard the Titan. All systems operating within optimal parameters, she reported to Captain Stone. The aliens' own energy signatures are actually helping us calibrate our targeting systems. Excellent, Stone replied. Show them what our point defense systems can do. A swarm of small objects was launched from one of the human destroyers. To the aliens, they appeared to be simple projectiles, but as they approached their target, another small asteroid, they began to demonstrate capabilities that should have been impossible. The projectiles moved through space in ways that ignored conventional physics, changing direction without thrust, accelerating without reaction mass, and existing in multiple locations simultaneously. When they struck the asteroid, the result was far more spectacular than the aliens' earlier demonstration. Instead of simply vaporizing the rock, the human weapons seemed to unravel it at a fundamental level. The asteroid didn't explode or disintegrate. It simply ceased to exist in normal space-time, leaving behind a perfectly spherical void that glowed with residual quantum energy. Those projectiles exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Captain Wright reported from his test vessel. They can strike targets before being fired and defend against attacks that haven't happened yet. The aliens were no longer looking confident or amused. The Dominion Prime himself, the supreme leader of their collective, spoke directly for the first time since arriving in the Sol system. This is impossible. The Prime's voice carried undertones of shock and growing fear. No single species develops this level of technology without guidance from an advanced collective. Who taught you these sciences? Admiral Morrison's response was delivered with quiet pride. No one taught us anything. We developed this technology ourselves, using our own methods and our own understanding of the universe. While your collective spent millennia following the same predictable patterns of development, we chose a different path. The explanation that followed revealed the true scope of humanity's achievement. For 50 years, while maintaining the appearance of a young spacefaring civilization, Earth had been pursuing scientific advancement through methods no other species had attempted. You see, Morrison continued, most species develop technology slowly and carefully, building on established principles and avoiding risk. Humans chose to embrace controlled chaos. We used artificial intelligence to accelerate our research, took massive calculated risks, and pursued theories that other species considered too dangerous or impossible. The results spoke for themselves. While the Dominion Collective had spent thousands of years perfecting conventional technology, humanity had compressed the same development into decades and then surpassed it completely. Captain Stone opened a channel to the alien flagship. Envoy Prime, we appreciate your visit and your offer. But as you can see, Earth is quite capable of managing its own affairs. We suggest you return to your collective and inform them that humanity will not be requiring their services. The alien. Fleet began attempting to withdraw, but Admiral King's voice stopped them. I'm afraid departure is not currently an option. We've been monitoring your communications, and we know about the forced integration of hundreds of species throughout your territory. That ends now. The space around the alien ships filled with quantum disruption fields that prevented them from engaging their faster-than-light drives. They were trapped in normal space-time, surrounded by vessels that could destroy them before they could even attempt to fight back. The Dominion Collective has a choice, King announced. You can abandon your policy of forced integration and transition to voluntary cooperation with the species in your territory, or you can face the consequences of continuing your current practices. The demonstration had become something far more significant than anyone had expected. Humanity hadn't just revealed their technological superiority, they had announced their intention to become a major force in galactic politics, one that would not tolerate the oppression of other species. The silence that followed Admiral King's ultimatum stretched across space for long minutes. The alien fleet remained trapped within humanity's quantum disruption fields, their faster-than-light drives completely disabled. For the first time in their long history, the Dominion Collective found themselves at the mercy of a species they had considered primitive just hours before. President Karen White sat in the Oval Office, watching the events unfold through a secure video link to Admiral Morrison's command center. The weight of the moment was not lost on her. Humanity was about to take its first steps as a major galactic power, and the decisions made in the next few hours would shape the future of countless civilizations. "Admiral Morrison," she said into her communication device, "you have authorization to proceed with the Sol Accords proposal." Morrison nodded grimly. "Understood, Madam President. Beginning broadcast now." The message that went out was not directed only at the trapped Dominion fleet, but broadcast on frequencies that would reach every civilized world within 100 light years. It was humanity's formal announcement of their arrival on the galactic stage. "This is Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Defense Forces, broadcasting to all civilizations within range of this transmission. Today marks the beginning of a new era in galactic relations. Humanity formally announces the establishment of AO, the Sol Accords, a framework for interstellar cooperation based on the principles of voluntary association and species sovereignty." President White's voice joined the broadcast, speaking with the authority of Earth's elected government. "We extend protection to any species seeking freedom from forced collective integration. We offer partnership between equals, not domination, by the strong over the weak." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Communication channels throughout the solar system began receiving messages from worlds that had been forcibly integrated into the Dominion Collective. Hundreds of species that had been silenced for centuries suddenly found their voices again, crying out for the freedom that humanity was offering. Ambassador Rodriguez was still aboard the diplomatic station with the alien representatives, watching their reactions as the scope of humanity's intentions became clear. Envoy Prime looked stunned, his confident demeanor completely shattered. "You cannot possibly protect all those worlds," he said, his voice carrying a note of desperation. "The Dominion spans thousands of star systems. Even with your advanced technology, you are still just one species." "You're absolutely right," Rodriguez replied calmly. "We are just one species. But we're not trying to build an empire like yours. We're trying to build something better." The explanation that followed revealed the true genius of humanity's approach. While the Dominion Collective had focused on accumulating territory and subjects, humanity had focused on developing principles and technologies that could be shared freely with willing partners. Fleet Admiral King's voice came through the communication channels again, this time addressing the broader galactic community. "The Sol Accords offer a simple proposition. Any species that chooses to join us maintains complete sovereignty over their internal affairs. We share technology freely with our partners, but we never impose our values or systems on others. In return, we ask only for mutual defense cooperation and a commitment to respect the sovereignty of other member species. The concept was revolutionary in galactic terms. Most interstellar civilizations were either empires that conquered and absorbed other species, or isolated worlds that refused all contact with outsiders. The idea of a voluntary confederation of equals was something entirely new. Dr. Hamilton had been monitoring communications from across the galaxy, analyzing the responses to humanity's announcement. "We're receiving formal requests for protection from over 300 worlds," she reported to President White. "Most of them are species that were forcibly integrated by the Dominion within the last few centuries." "What about the other major galactic powers?" White asked. "Mixed reactions," Hamilton replied. "The Arbiter Council wants to establish formal diplomatic contact. They seem genuinely curious about our technology and our governmental structure. Several smaller empires are requesting non-aggression pacts, but there are also some hostile responses from civilizations that see us as a threat to their own expansion." "Plans," President White nodded. She had expected as much. Humanity's sudden emergence as a galactic superpower would inevitably create both allies and enemies among the stars. Meanwhile, the practical work of implementing the Sol Accords was already beginning. Captain Stone was coordinating the deployment of Colossus-Class vessels to strategic positions throughout the galaxy, establishing a network of protection that could respond to threats against any member world within hours. "The Titan is taking position in the Vega system," she reported to Admiral King. "The local species there broke free from Dominion control 3 hours ago and formally requested protection under the Sol Accords." "Excellent," King replied. "What's the status of the liberation fleets?" Commander Turner had been reassigned to lead one of the rapid response forces that were moving to assist worlds trying to break free from various oppressive regimes. Liberation Fleet Alpha is approaching the Kepler system, the indigenous population. There has been in revolt against their Dominion overseers for the past 6 hours. We should be able to provide support within the next 2 hours. The speed of humanity's response was made possible by the same dimensional folding technology that had shocked the aliens during the demonstration. Human ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours, making it impossible for oppressive regimes to retaliate against worlds that chose to join the Sol Accords. General Harris was overseeing the expansion of humanity's hidden construction facilities. "We're bringing online construction platforms in 12 new star systems," he reported to President White. "Our automated systems can establish a full industrial base in any system within 6 months." The technology that humanity was sharing with their new partners was carefully selected to promote freedom and self-determination. Advanced defensive systems, quantum communication networks, and automated manufacturing were all made available to Sol Accord members, but weapons of mass destruction and conquest-oriented technologies were restricted to Earth's own forces. Dr. Foster was working with scientists from dozens of newly liberated worlds, helping them understand and implement the quantum technologies that made true interstellar cooperation possible. "The learning curve is steep," she admitted, "but these species are incredibly motivated. The Centauri delegation has already mastered basic quantum entanglement communications." Back at the diplomatic station, the final confrontation with the Dominion Collective was reaching its conclusion. The alien fleet had been given a stark choice: abandon their policy of forced integration or face dismantlement by humanity's superior forces. The Dominion Prime's response came through in a transmission that carried undertones of defeat and grudging. "Respect. The collective acknowledges the superiority of human technology and the legitimacy of your territorial claims. We agree to release all forcibly integrated species and transition to voluntary association only. That's a good start, Admiral Morrison replied. But we're going to need verification. Human observers will be deployed to monitor your compliance with these terms. The idea of being monitored by a species they had considered primitive was clearly humiliating for the aliens, but they had no choice but to accept. The alternative was the complete destruction of their fleet and the collapse of their empire. As the immediate crisis resolved, the broader implications of humanity's emergence began to sink in across the galaxy. Ancient civilizations that had remained neutral for millennia suddenly found themselves re-evaluating their positions. Young species that had been hiding from more powerful neighbors began reaching out to humanity for protection and guidance. Ambassador Rodriguez was preparing to return to Earth when she received a communication from the Arbiter Council, a group of the galaxy's oldest and most respected civilizations. They wanted to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity and learn more about the principles behind the Soul Accords. "This is unprecedented," the Arbiter spokesman said in his transmission. "In all our years of observation, we have never encountered a species that achieved technological transcendence while maintaining democratic principles and respect for individual rights. We would be honored to learn from your example." President White smiled as she listened to the transmission. "Tell them that Earth would be delighted to host a formal diplomatic mission," she replied. "We have much to learn from their experience, just as they might have something to learn from ours." The transformation of galactic civilization was happening faster than anyone had expected. Within days of humanity's revelation, over 1,000 worlds had joined the Soul Accords. Ancient empires were collapsing as their subject species chose freedom over security. New alliances were forming based on cooperation rather than conquest. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of Luna Station Prime, looking out at a solar system that had been forever changed. Human vessels were departing for distant stars, carrying the promise of freedom to civilizations that had never dared hope for independence.